As we get into dynamic host pooling, auto scaling stuff we've talked about. Auto scaling is a huge part of the Nerdio story. They have scaling plan on the AVD side, but auto scaling really allows you to schedule your updates. Even right, you can then you can change your disk size. Do, as you can see here, your stopped OS disk type. This is one of those added sprinkled in features. Save costs when it's stopped. Downgrade to a standard HDD. You can re-image your hosts even to make it more like the Citrix world, where they're re-imaged every time. It takes a long time, though, by the way, doing that. And as you can see here, the scaling logic, lots of detailed points here of what you can do for pre-staging, draining, messaging, so on and so forth. So that's just a little bit of a touch on the auto scaling side, because really when you're talking AVD, that's where that comes into play. Cloud PC obviously is a 24/7. You don't worry about it. You don't think about it. But when it comes to AVD, you do have probably a bare minimum. You got to think about auto scaling, bring those up and down to save costs, right? So that's where that comes into play. And then Shane will go in a little bit here about the
Yeah, so just on the quick side, just to kind of show, like, if you are a Nerdio, right, you're doing AVD, you do have the ability now to do unified endpoint management. So it's going to bring in through the Azure Graph APIs, Cloud PC, Intune. So you're going to see all the capabilities. So if you're not an Intune customer historically, you can actually manage those Cloud PCs directly through Nerdio, which we thought was great to kind of show that integration. So all those things like resizing Cloud PCs, being able to deploy policies, compliance policies, scripts, user experience, all that can be done through here. The one thing that they're still working on, like if you were to actually go and kind of build some policies, it's not as intuitive of what's there in Intune, but it's going to be very soon. So it does have that kind of native integration, and then also native integration as far as building, your provisioning policy. So the idea here and kind of the takeaway is it gives you the ability because not everyone's familiar with Intune, right? That was traditionally a whole separate team. And so maybe this is a nice platform for you if you have a mix of AVD and some cloud PC. This is a great kind of unified layer for both.
Yep, one stop to go and do everything, right? Even the Intune management piece that we talked about.
Oh, there you go. I think you did the auto scale, right?
Yep. Yeah, we did that one. So yeah, so some deployment tips right here. So we'll just quickly run through it. You can see those up here.
Yeah, take screenshot of those.
Yeah, we got the URLs. You don't have to hit them right now. There's hardening involved. You got to set up back. It's a PaaS service, but it's in your resource group, in your environment. So there's some things to think about in the back of your head as you deploy it. They make it easy, but just some things to do later on, right? But it pays for itself, and that what we're meaning by that is the auto scaling and then the management overhead and giving you the features and stuff that you don't have to go then develop your own automation scripts and Terraform and all this stuff, right? Bicep plans and all that. So it saves you from that aspect pretty quickly. But yeah, so there's just some tips here. Take some screenshots of that. From a patching and packaging standpoint, again, going into this becomes very important. Why is this so important? As we move to more persistent personal host pools, this is becoming more of a thing on this conversation. Cloud PC is a big part of this. Because it's all persistent except for the new tech preview thing, right? So it's all persistent world. Persistency makes it easy out of the gates because it's just like a laptop. You don't have to worry about the nonsense with personalization data and Teams 2.1 not working right and all the stuff that's in a pooled world or a non-persistent world. You got to think about differently. So it helps with that, but then you have to have some ongoing your tool set involved for patching, updating, keeping them, keeping on top of stuff, right? Compliance. Those apps, they get old. You got to have some way of patching and mitigating those things. That's why this is becoming more of a deeper conversation. Intune can't do everything as well. Just know that. So anything with Cloud PC is always going to be Intune enrolled. AVD, not necessarily, unless you're doing, a hybrid. But Intune usually becomes part of the conversation, just de facto becomes part of it when you're talking Cloud PC and AVD. But it can't do everything. It's not great at app lifecycles. You're redeploying new builds of apps all the time under the app, for that. So then it really gets into some of these other pieces. So what can we use, right? Nerdio has the unified app management catalog we mentioned that supports the Winget community repository and Intune for deploying. TrollUp has what they call security access now control for compliance, which does the same similar thing. Using that agent, it can see everything on my physical laptop, for example, or a cloud PC, and it can see what apps we have there. Oh, the new build is out. This one has a CVE related to it. I need to patch for that, right? It can do OS hardening, Intune, app deployment. You got your update rings in there for the OS. The update rings are sensational in Intune for keeping on top of OS updates, right? And what does that look like? Nerdio is a unified catalog with a couple things in our lab, right? For being able to deploy apps similar to what you would have in Intune. And then from a control up standpoint, you can just see here a lot of colors. But mitigation, CVEs come out. You got some things on an OS, BitLocker's not turned on, these kind of things. It can help with the compliance side of things. So that's that security X piece specifically on that. And then as you get into complete other third-party solutions, we've been talking to some of our customers. You're familiar with Patch My PC, or even Avante has their patch. When we start thinking about Intune and having a product that's very focused on application lifecycle and patching and hooking that into Intune, for example, this is where this comes into play with this conversation for that longer term strategy for what you can do there. So, BCDR with AVD, Nerdio Cloud PC. I'll just talk to the AVD one real quick, but again, it's globally available. But you do have to build that landing zone. So this goes back to our conversation before. You got to have that design properly built into it from the start, the desired resiliency. We do have the NME capability of what they call the host pool DR, which is more of an active very limited, where that would be useful, honestly, with active regional, because you have all these other apps and stuff that usually you need to talk to. But FSLogix, Cloud Cache, is native to FSLogix, backup self-restore. So it's mainly Nerdio can help with a feature there, but for the most part, you have to design in your resiliency and design it properly, and you have to think about that versus W365.
Yep. Yeah. On the cloud PC side, right? It's as we mentioned, leverages the AVD control plane from a resiliency standpoint. $5 add-on for cross-regional DR landing zone. Obviously, if you are doing ANC, you need to have a landing zone and NVA, network virtual appliance, or firewall over there in that region for your NIC to have that traffic and traverse back. During failover, this is very key, right? In a cross-regional DR failover, it's a temporary cloud PC. That data is not stored, it's not failed back. So that's one thing that they call out in the documentation. It's there. You can use it, get access to your apps, but your data set, anything that you change is not going to be saved today. That will probably change in the future. And then self-service backup, restore, reset as well on the dedicated side. And then one thing that was just mentioned on the tech preview side was the ability for what they call DR Plus. And essentially, there's a big change in the RPO and then guarantee as well, a potential guarantee. I think they were mentioning as well in the preview. So it's going from a 4-hour RTO down to 30 minutes, and from a point in time based on the recovery snapshot, now it's within 60 minutes on the DR Plus. So just announced, literally like yesterday. So